day it is. I appreciate everyone's patience in the rescheduling. Hurricane Debbie kind of threw us for a loop, but here we are on just a beautiful day. And my name is Jeff Wolfsleigel. I'm the Chief of Communications for the Bureau of Forestry, and I really appreciate your great attendance and everybody being here as we celebrate Smokey's 80th birthday. To get started. We have some speakers this morning to help us celebrate the birthday. So we're going to get started with District Forester for the Michaud here, Roy Brubaker.
Hi, thanks for coming out, everyone. I just this morning asked my colleague Earl Hockenberry from Caledonia State Park to share this welcome with me, because Earl is the manager of Caledonia and Mont Alto State Park. So we're kind of on his turf here, and on the Michaud, state parks and forests kind of evolved together and eventually turned into separate bureaus. So I'd like to welcome Earl up to say a few words about where we are, the significance of this facility, the significance of this park, and the significance of parks within the Michaud. So Earl, I'll take it from there and say a few words about the Michaud then, but we'd like to start with Earl.
Thank you, Roy. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Mont Alto State Park. My brief talk is just going to be a quick timeline of the park. So in 1807, Daniel and Sam Hughes built an iron furnace in this area. In 1815, they built a foundry, and then it ran for about 50 years. In 1864, General George Weisling, bought the furnace under the Mont Alto Iron Company. And then after that, the Mont Alto Railroad came through, and in 1875, the Mont Alto Park was built. And that was for the area, for the iron workers, for their families and everything. And people came from as far as Harrisburg, Baltimore, Chambersburg. They all came here. It was a huge deal back in the day. Then about 1902, the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania purchased 20,000 acres that became the state forest park at the time. And then after that, the forestry school opened over here. That was 1903. And then in 1929, the Mont Alto and State College Forestry Schools combined into one school. So this park, Mont Alto, is the oldest state park. However, it is not the first state park. There's a little bit of interesting history here. The first state park was actually, I believe, I could be wrong, it was actually Valley Forge in Pennsylvania, but then the feds took it over. So Mont Alto now has the oldest state park in Pennsylvania, but it is not the first state park. That's one of my favorite bits of trivia about this park. So, all right, with that, I'll turn it back over to Roy.
I've been the district forester here for 13 years, and they've been by far the best 13 years of my career. And a lot of that is because the Michaud, as a forest, is such a microcosm of the stories that we tell about conservation and the challenges that we face in conservation today. So that's been kind of the intriguing part of working on the Michaud. You act as a forester, you work as a forester, you have the opportunities to do what you're trained as a forester, but you also get to interact with people like Earl and Jason and Chris Houck and the other park managers that are nested within us that share the same mission in a very different kind of management context. I'm always amazed at their ability to keep track of details about structures and schedules and when people come into the park and the types of people pressures that you can fit onto a 700 or 1,500 acre parcel of land, which from my perspective is very small. So the Michaud is 85,000 acres plus a couple thousand. We are a ecoregion. The South Mountain ecoregion is one of the smaller physiological provinces in Pennsylvania. As an ecoregion, it's a really important bioreserve for a whole bunch of threatened and endangered species that have a lot of people living in and around them on the forest. So Michaud makes up about 97% of the forest cover, the remaining forest habitat in the South Mountain ecoregion. So we as foresters and as park managers feel the custodial responsibility for the natural systems that we have, and it's a really important and engaging part of the complexity of the forest. The thing that I love about forestry is that forestry teaches you to deal with a lot of complexity with some relatively simple principles. And I think ultimately that's what we're here to celebrate, because that's what Smokey helped us to sort of boil some things down into some very simple messages, some very simple principles that help us to deal with complexity at a lot of different levels. Be careful. Think about unintended consequences. Think about the things that might suffer if you're not careful. Think about the things that need to belong to the forest, those who need to belong to the forest that might not have a voice in those decisions, or in those consequences, or how to weigh those consequences. And so a lot of what I appreciate about being a forester is that we think about forests with admittedly simplified models, simplified metrics, and simplified concepts. Things like a diversified landscape, a diversified age class, ways to maintain diverse habitat patches, to make sure that we have a diverse system of trails that have areas where they are easy and accessible so that everybody can feel a part of the forest and a part of the system that cares for the forest, and other areas where they're more rugged and people that need that solitude and that wilderness experience can find those. So I think we're here today to celebrate both the simplicity and the complexity of what we've done over the last several, 150 years. I think Smokey joined us sometime in 1940. Sorry, Smokey, I don't have this, all the dates that Earl has for history, but I think it was sometime in the
80 years ago.
80 years ago.
And I should know that because my mom is at her 84th weekend. So, Smokey, you don't have other plans apparently. I didn't even realize that. Thank you. So anyhow, with that said, the other thing I really appreciate about Smokey is that a big part of our challenge in today's society is that fire is still with us. But fire and fire messaging has become more complicated too, because now fire, especially on a place like Michaud, is also one of the tools that we use to become more active and to demonstrate that care. Care is not only about being cautious and considerate of unintended consequences. Being careful can also mean being full of care. And when we're full of care, we have to act. And we have to learn how to evolve the things that we are cautious about and taking some risks in the face of uncertainty. So a lot of what we're doing on the show right now is using those messages of Smokey and the credibility that Smokey has earned over his 80-year lifespan to help us communicate to people in new ways, even about fire and the role of fire in ecosystems and landscape management. So with that, I'm really happy that our state fire warden, Mike Kern, is here, and I think you met from your agenda, Mike, thanks for coming up and sharing your perspective with us. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Mike Kern. I'm Chief of the Forest Fire Protection Division. I also serve as the Chief Forest Fire Warden for the Commonwealth. I want to thank everybody for being here, for joining us today. It's certainly a beautiful day in Pennsylvania today. So when I was preparing for this, I looked back at what I talked about 5 years ago. We had a 75th birthday with Smokey. And then I started thinking about all the things that we've gone through in the past 5 years as a nation and a world and society, and there's been a lot of change. Smokey's 5 years older, but the world has changed tremendously in the past 5 years. And because that was 2019, and there has been a lot of change in between there, to say the least. But then also, if you think about 8 years ago, which Roy kind of alluded to, 1944 was a very different time for the United States. There was a lot of challenges, a world war. Our society was geared towards that, and there was a lot of fears at the time. But forests, trees, and water were still important. They were important to the war effort. They were important to our society, and they're still important today. And I think that's what's important to me. Is those things are still important. Maybe for different reasons. We have a better understanding of those things, how they relate to us, but they're still important to us as humans and to how we live. And so when I think about Smokey's 80th, it's not so much about Smokey, even though he's my friend. My kids say I work for Smokey. it's the message, and the message that Smokey conveys about fire prevention, being careful, taking care of your fellow human beings. It's a really big deal here in Pennsylvania. 99% of our fires are caused by humans, which is tremendously high if you think about it. We have 1,000 fires, 900 plus caused by humans. So that means that we can all do something for fire prevention and protection. Just being careful with fire, spreading the message, thinking about it, thinking about what we're doing. Fire is a powerful tool. We're going to talk about that. We now understand fires can be beneficial in certain ecosystems. The Michaud is certainly one of them. It's almost all fire-adapted and fire-dependent ecosystems. But we have to do it carefully. We have to use that care, whether we're using fire or putting fire out. And that just shows, shows our care for our fellow citizens. It shows our care as an agency and as firefighters, responders, ecologists, or whatever your role is. Our state's been a leader in wildfire prevention for a long time. There's even some regional awards that are named after people that used to work in our agency that are for fire prevention efforts. So that's, I think, a really big honor for Pennsylvania. But we want to keep that moving in the future. Smokey's 80, but he's going to have some more birthdays coming up, and he's going to keep working. And so just to close this out, there's, over the years, 80 years, there's been thousands and thousands of hours spent on wildfire prevention efforts. And not only by Smokey, but by our wardens, both volunteers and employees, local fire departments, all our cooperators. And so I just want to say thank you to all those who've contributed time and effort over those 80 years. Their dedications really, made a huge difference, and we hope that can continue on into the future. So thank you. Thank you, Smokey.
Alongside Smokey to promote his message, reminding us all that fire safety is a community-wide effort. If you're wondering what you can get a bear that has everything that he wants and needs for his special day, I'd encourage you to contact your local fire department and volunteer to be part of their organization, whether it's actually as a firefighter or helping with administrative support, or to promote Smokey's message of fire safety in your community and in our state parks. Your efforts would be a great gift to Smokey and his legacy. Smokey's been a trusted friend and a guide in fire prevention for 80 years. Let's continue to honor his legacy by staying vigilant, informed, and committed to fire safety in our homes, communities, and natural spaces. Thank you for your continued support in keeping Pennsylvania safe from fire. Together, we can ensure that Smokey Bear's message remains as relevant today as it was 80 years ago. I'll now turn the podium over to Celeste Powell.
That's a good catch.
Association.
I am the association manager for the Pennsylvania Forestry Association. We have been around since 1886, and Richard will talk a little more about our relationship with DCNR, which has been really forever. And we just want to, I often think about how Dr. Rock would see us today. When we were created by Dr. Rock, and it was because a bunch of very influential Philadelphians had seen what the middle of Pennsylvania was looking at that time, which I believe we were so eloquently called the desert, right? And we were looking rough. And so I think about then how we have a wonderful school not far away, and how we created a friend that hung out with Smokey for a little bit, but Smokey stood the test of time. And it's just a real honor for us to be together, to continue that partnership as we're all here today. celebrate Penn's Woods, the bigger part of the forest, and Smokey Bear. So I'm going to leave it to Richard to do a little more in-depth talk. Happy birthday.
Thanks, Alyssa. There's been a long history of cooperation and support between the Pennsylvania Forestry Association and the Pennsylvania Department of Conservation and Natural Resources. I was asked to talk a little about that relationship. PFA was founded in 1886, and a few years later, in 1895, the first government agency in Pennsylvania concerned about our forests was then called the Division of Forestry, and it was established. 3 years after that, in 1898, Pennsylvania purchased the Sproul State Forest with the support of PFA and its members. Now, before your eyes glaze over, let me say that I'm not about to cover every instance of cooperation between PFA and the DCNR Bureau of Forestry that occurred in the last 13 decades. I will simply say that there's been a long-term, committed, and remarkable working relationship between DCNR, especially its Bureau of Forestry, and the Pennsylvania Forestry Association. I'll jump ahead to right now, jumping ahead to 2024. Most recently, PFA members supported in writing and in public hearings DCNR's decision to establish a much-needed multi-million-dollar new Michaud State Forest Resource Management Office and a visitor center that will, on a site that's only a few miles from where we're standing here today. This facility with a strong focus on forest history, forest recreation, and interpretive and interactive forestry education for the general public will be a wonderful asset for this area when it's finally constructed. I'd like to ask how many of you folks here in the audience are members of the Pennsylvania Forestry Association? Show of hands, great. That's great. I thank you so much for being a member of PFA. And I encourage those of you who are not PFA members to become members. Membership will offer you a way to receive constant and up-to-date information about Pennsylvania's forests, its trees, its watersheds, its wildlife, and its forest recreation opportunities. You'll also receive Pennsylvania's quarterly magazine, Pennsylvania Forest, which is the envy of many other state forestry associations throughout the U.S. And I will remark that in terms of cooperation, this issue back in 2020 was devoted to the Pennsylvania Bureau of Forestry and their 125th anniversary. The whole issue was another example of our cooperation with DCNR. As an incentive to join PFA, the officers in your association are allowed to offer a special first-year membership rate to those folks who attend one of our official events. And partnering with DCNR this morning, this event makes it a PFA official event. So, Celeste here has some applications, I believe. Where are you, Celeste? You'll see her after we're done here. You can qualify for a 50% discount off the normal 30-year annual membership rate. It'll make your first year of membership dues only $15. I encourage you to join us in our continuing goal to protect, to manage, and to enhance Pennsylvania's forests, waters, and wildlife. I will also say that I have something in common with Smokey Bear. We were both born in 1944. I think he looks a lot better than I do. I'm a professional forester by my original career. I'm retired now. Past president of the Forestry Association, currently a commissioner for the Fish and Boat Commission. And I've enjoyed my roles here in Pennsylvania, and I'm pleased to be here at this particular birthday celebration. And now I would like to welcome to the podium our Secretary of the Department of Conservation and Natural Resources and my friend, Cindy Dunn.
Thank you, Richard. You really embody After an event yesterday at Memorial Lake State Park, I popped up to the top of the mountain and found one of our retired foresters deeply involved in site management of a hawk collection, doing a hawk count in a regular endeavor. You find it all over our system. Our volunteer base, our support base, our friends base is something we can't live without. And when I sit here hearing Roy, hearing Earl, hearing Mike Kern, and looking around this room of the DCNR staff, nothing makes me prouder than the public servants that are here today, protecting the public land, serving you, the public, making the public land available to all, and for perpetuity, really creating our mission, carrying it forward in perpetuity. I'd like a round of applause for the public servants that serve us in our public lands and our public spaces in this Commonwealth. People who know me know that I'm recycled from the last administration of the Secretary under Governor Wolf. People ask me why I'm still here. Usually governors get to run secretary, and I had promised Josh Shapiro. I told him, I'm retirement age and I got a lot of traveling and hiking stuff I want to do, but I'll help you set up the new DCNR. I'll help you with the policies and stuff. And as we got close to the time and he became, he won the election, and I said, well, you know what? I love this job. And what I love about it is the staff and the people and the mission and their friends and their partners that serve it. So I went back and I said, well, you know what? If you want me, I'll stay. I interviewed for it and I got to stay, and I'm very honored for that opportunity. But it's the partnerships, the mission, the staff that really make it special. And that deep and rich history that Richard talked about, that I'm going to build on just a little bit. I'm at risk of offending some of the staff that are here. I'll just point out a few people. Claire Jans, our deputy for Conservation and Technical Services, is no stranger in this pavilion. She headed the Friends of the Show. But she's a professor from Shippensburg who's now our deputy, and a real key leader, and really helping us in a whole round of things. I'm really happy that Claire's joined the rank from a DCNR friend to a DCNR employee. Gretchen Leslie, my senior advisor, is the chief of our strategic initiatives. Gretchen was a press secretary in the first DCNR event that celebrated Smokey on your 50th. Do you remember that? Very vibrant now, very vibrant then. Gretchen was the person who shepherded you in on your 50th. And a number of other key leaders across DCNR. We're sharing cake later. I hope you go up to someone with a logo on and introduce yourself and get to know our wonderful staff. And hope everyone in this room gets to know each other. Going on what Richard said about this deep and rich history, we are standing in hallowed ground. When you think about conservation, and Richard mentioned it, and Celeste mentioned it, back at the turn of the last century, late 1800s, early 1900s, this was decimated land. Less all the desert. Pennsylvania was burned over, cut over. Smokey was not happy. A lot of Smokey's friends were not happy. It was smoldering ruins. And from this action, this conservation movement grew across the country. And in New York, when they created the Adirondacks, conservationists everywhere were getting this, what can we do? And from this, Joseph T. Rothrock, Myron Lloyd Dock, and the conservation leaders of the time really coalesced around this spot, created the Forestry School of Forestry here at Mont Alto, understood the civic side of this, the Pennsylvania Forestry Association, its relationship to government, knowing that it's both in congruence, built a professional side with the Bureau of Forestry. Meanwhile, at the national level, the U.S. Forest Service was up and running, and this we call the cradle of conservation. The conversations that really led to the conservation movement across Pennsylvania happened around campfires, happened around places like down here. Those key leaders that had the vision and understood what it took to bring back the forests of Pennsylvania for the good of all. And their vision was spot on for all the reasons. Clean water, forest products, healthy environment, habitat, reducing coming down from the runoff from the hillsides. With the deforested hillside, sediment was running into our streams and rivers. And so from this vision, was built, the land was acquired to the point that we have 2.2 million acres of forest land, 124 state parks. This legacy of conservation is held for the benefit of all for the long run and perpetuity. So that's why we call it the forever business, and the ongoing professional work and friends group support and civic leadership and citizen involvement is critical for that resource to be there in perpetuity. We consider Smokey's birthday an important part of that element, as Mike Kern referenced. Smokey is a deep and rich part of our history and culture. Our understanding of the role of fire and people and care, as Roy alluded to, is an important part and woven into the fabric of conservation. So Smokey is more than only you can prevent wildfire. Smokey is really symbolic of civic engagement and involvement around protecting the resource that we all care about and need in the forever business. So Smokey's 80th is really a milestone in this long job of the forever business, and that burden and honor that we all carry when you commit yourself to conservation, whether on the civic side or whether on the government side. That bundle of responsibility and honor is carried by all and really symbolized very deeply by Smokey. So celebrating every one of Smokey's birthdays is important. When he hits a milestone, we never want to miss it. So we'll be here for the 85th too. But anyway, it's good. It's wonderful to see friends and partners from across. People come from pretty far for this. Spotting some faces from pretty far away here. I see the Yinzers are here. I see people from the Northeast here. Thank you, Adams County Commissioners, for showing up. Really, really appreciate everyone coming together. I hope people hang around. If you have some cake, enjoy the fellowship, enjoy this incredible day. Just one final footnote, and on a light note, when the date was my choice, Hurricane Debbie happened. So we turned the decision over to Roy.
She just said you better get better weather this time. I think the big team came together.
Roy did a super job.
Roy did, but we couldn't go off and send the office, so thank you. All right, with that, I'll be quiet. Thanks again. Thanks all our friends and allies and supporters here. Thanks to the stewards that all of you are. Thanks for the work you do on behalf of conservation and to carry the legacy of conservation forward and wrap around Smokey's great 80th birthday. So let's celebrate. Ready?
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Smokey.